Welcome to the Leader Mentality Show with Rob Clemens. We are here in sunny Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it's still a little bit chilly out, so if you guys are out there, make sure you're wearing your winter coats and everything. Eventually, it'll turn into spring, but look, it's hard to complain when you're in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina at all anyway, right? But we appreciate everybody tuning in for today. And on this show today, I want to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. It's such an underrated part of leadership because oftentimes, as we're going through our day-to-day life, we all have things going on. We have ups in our own lives, downs in our own lives. And the problem, if you're a leader, though, is people are looking to you for inspiration and guidance, sometimes for motivation, and we have to know how we're affecting others in our day-to-day process. So today I want to talk about this emotional intelligence, why it's so important, how you can master it. And to do so, I've actually brought on a guest that is highly esteemed. It's Mr. Colin Stevens from Colin Stevens Coaching, and he's written a book. He's got a conference coming up, but we'll get all to that in a minute. Colin, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Man, it's good. Man, I've heard so many good things about you. Coastal Carolina University graduate, basketball player from Coastal. You're doing leadership. These are all my things, man. I don't know where you've been.
Go Shants, baby.
Shants up always, you know. Tell me a little bit about what's been going on in life, man. What's good?
Yeah, man, just starting all kinds of new stuff. I do have my second annual conference with Better Leadership coming up. But I've been in the basketball world since I can remember, since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And played at Coastal and had a pretty unique story in terms of walking on and earning a scholarship, becoming a starter, and senior year team captain. And so I continued on with basketball and in training and development. Started my own business here in Myrtle Beach, Manzer Basketball Academy.
Nice.
And then from there on, I started working with some pros overseas and NBA guys. We had NBA pre-draft training for 3 consecutive years, and we've got one of those guys that was in that camp is still with the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
So I did a whole bunch of stuff in basketball that I loved, and basketball was always my vehicle for development.
Right.
But there got to a point, I would say probably 5 or 6 years ago, where I felt like I was more interested in coaching the character of the people that I was with versus just the basketball skills. So I could see this natural progression in myself of seeing a lot of successful players on the court, yet they struggled in their relationships or their finances, or off the court was a mess, right? And so...
It's kind of amazing, jumping in on that one. You look at people who they're willing to put in the effort on the court, they're willing to put in the hard time and put in the, putting things into the future and reserving immediate gratification so they can be the best at what they do. But then they go home and they don't apply the same principles.
Yeah, and it's hard too because what applies in sports, the principles that work in sports, the principles that work in business, don't necessarily apply to relationships and our own personal development.
Right.
Because there's an awareness factor, right? Like, we can put our head down as businessmen and get after it. We can put our head down as athletes and get after it. Because normally, that just has to do with us.
Yeah.
Now, even if you're in a team setting, certainly it brings other people in. When you start talking about like close relationships, you're talking about a spouse or
okay,
kids.
Honey, we're gonna practice for a few minutes. Right? It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah.
Right? No, I get you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I've been leaning into that a lot. I've got a development group for men locally here in Myrtle Beach, and looking at expanding that as well. And just, I'm all about development, man. I'm all about seeing how I can be of best impact and service to the people that I am with and serve.
Man, I really love that. And I'm got to go back into this backstory because I feel like you went over so many interesting things, and that I want to dive into them a little bit. Tell me about that walk-on experience, because a lot of us, there's a powerful lesson in life, which is that you go and you're playing high school basketball maybe, and you don't get the scholarship. And if I misspeak on your story, feel free to stop me, but you don't get the scholarship, and there's 2 ways you could look at that, right? You could say, basketball is not for me, I wasn't good enough, I'll just go try something else. I'm going to go, I'll focus on something. And the other way is no, I want to fight for this. I believe in this. I love this. And you chose that path. I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah, fight is like the exact word. I came out of high school. I was not highly recruited. only 5'7". I was a good player, but just didn't get out very much, and wasn't a part of travel club. And so I tried to go to a university, Towson University. It was 30 minutes from my home. Figured I could walk on. Figured I could walk on. I was most valuable player in Baltimore County my senior year, so I could play.
Yeah.
But I just thought it would happen. And I got cut. We had one tryout, and then I got the phone call, and it was very quick, and it was very abrupt. And I figured I could walk on to a team who, this wasn't the University of Maryland. It was Towson University. Right. So figured I'd have a chance. And I got cut. And I remember after that just being depressed and down and thinking, dang, looks like it's over.
Yeah.
Looks like I'll just work and go to school and figure it out.
One of the things you love most in life, and it's like I'm giving it up at 18 years old, man. Right? That's a tough feeling. And I think that one thing that happened with you there is you walk into the room and you're immediately judged. You're not 6'2", even if you got a beautiful jump shot and you got handles and all that, but you don't fit the profile they're expecting. So you got to work a little bit harder anyway. And now you didn't get much of a shot, I guess. But, yeah.
That's a lot of how it happened, and that was a lot of my career, and being able to then figure out oh my gosh, I love this. A week or two in of not playing and just licking my wounds and whatnot as an 18-year-old, I was like, I'm just going to go back out of the court and just do what I love doing. So that also kept me going. And when you love something, you breathe life into it.
Tend to make time for it too, right?
And so through I went to a summer camp where I met Coach Dave Manzer, who started recruiting me, but he was a Division III school. For whatever reason, I still thought I could play Division I, even though I just got cut from a bad Division I team, and nobody else was looking at me on the Division I side of things. A coach at a Division III level is interested, and I'm like, I think I can still, I remember my dad being like, "What is wrong with you? Why don't you just take this? He wants you to come and play for him." And anyhow, he talked to Pete Strickland, who was the head coach down here at Coastal Carolina, and said, "Hey, man, I've got somebody who's interested. I think he's worth taking a look at." So I got down here, and Coach Strickland was just like, "Look, I hope that you're a good enough player to make the team, but if not, I hope you like the school."
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
so it's a great school.
And so 8 hours away, it was kind of like, how's this going to go? So anyhow, I was the last guy to make the team. Okay. He kept 4 walk-ons, which is crazy because a lot of teams don't keep any walk-ons. Yeah. And I was the last guy to make the team. Man. 3rd string point guard, so I wasn't going to see any minutes until 2 guys got hurt in front of me. Okay. 2 guys got hurt in front of me that year. So my freshman walk-on season, I started 20 games and wound up earning a scholarship. And then my senior year, we won 20 games and we're a point away from the NCAA tournament.
Ooh, man. You know what? I want to talk about the lesson. Sometimes I hear stories and there's a lesson in the story, right? And the lesson in this case is, I have a little phrase I say to people, and if you follow me enough, you'll start hearing me say this. I say, everything we do is our audition for tomorrow. Everything we do is our audition for tomorrow. So in other words, maybe I think I'm better than the job I'm in. Maybe I think I'm better at playing whatever I'm playing than I'm doing right now. But if you're great at what you do, if you show passion for what you do, your audition is coming and you're getting good while maybe nobody's even watching. You're getting great, right? And so here you are, and you're the definition of that. 2 guys inexplicably get injured, and here you come on the floor. Man, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like we could that's a whole show right there, and we're supposed to be talking about emotional intelligence, but doggone.
And this it leads into where I am now, certainly, because of the difficulty that I went through and the awareness that I had. I can tell you why I didn't play well at certain stretches of my college career. Yeah. And then I can also tell you, and it had to do more with my emotion, it didn't have anything to do with my skill.
Tell me about that. So it was more about your emotion.
100%.
Explain.
It had everything to do with me being clear enough in my mind to be able to perform at a high level. When I was worried about trying to keep my coach happy, when I was worried about who was in the stands, when I was worried about, am I playing good enough, or just fearful thoughts, when that is what's consuming me, well, of course I can't focus on just getting the job done. My mind is spinning with all these things, and then what it does for my emotions is it just makes me feel like I'm not confident, and it makes me back off a little bit, and then I play a little passive. On the other hand, when my mind was clear and I wasn't worried about what anybody else was thinking about me, And sometimes when those thoughts would creep in or those fears would creep in, I would, put a wall up and manage those emotions. Then I could perform at the highest level.
This is that emotional intelligence you're
Yes.
talking about. One thing I love about this too is that in sales training, I've told a lot of great salespeople over the years, especially as they've gotten into a habit of maybe they've had some successes, they've had some down stretches, but if you start to realize that the best version of you, when you are able to lock in on what that customer needs, that service mindset, it takes you ahead. But so often we get stuck in this withdrawn internal dialogue, and it's like, yeah, you can definitely throw your sales from here to here in a heartbeat just by having a wrong mindset. So I always told people, just take that one breather before you get out of the truck and you're going to meet the people, or before you walk out of your office and you're going to meet the people. Take a breather and understand that they don't know you. They're here, and what you present is all they're going to know. So you got to be your best.
Absolutely, and to be able to be aware, like that is the central theme of emotional intelligence. So if we can be aware of why we're feeling the way we're feeling, right? And so like you go into a new sales meeting, they don't know you. The thoughts that could be swirling in your head are, what are they going to think about me? Are they going to like me? Are they going to like the service that I'm trying to provide? Whatever it is, right? And so if your mind is swirling there, and then what it does is it starts to take form in your body. It makes you nervous, makes you start sweating. Maybe you get tight and you tense up and you don't breathe a lot. And so all of that is restrictive type stuff. And if you go into a meeting and you're restrictive in a way, people are going to feel that. They're going to notice that.
Wow.
But if we can breathe through it, we can understand what we're feeling while we're feeling it, and we can breathe through it, and then we can start to replace some of those thoughts with like, oh, I'm gonna have a great meeting. I'm like, if they don't like me, that's okay. If I don't get a sale, it's okay. Like, take the pressure off, however you need to do it, whatever it is. And then you breathe enough to let your body relax. Well, when you're relaxed with somebody and when you're really actually presenting who you are, most people are attracted to that.
Oh, yeah,
the best version of yourself, people are attracted to.
You remember the movie Hitch with Will Smith?
Yeah.
I love this movie. There's a part at the beginning where he says, be yourself. He goes, if you're confident, be confident. If you're shy, be shy. He goes, but be the best you, and people will be attracted to that. And I've always remembered that line from that movie. Shout out to Will Smith. But it was a great movie from that aspect, because that to me stuck with me, and I always used it in the sales context, because I'd say, we'd have somebody come on, somebody's listening to another salesperson, and they go, I want to be just like that. We had Natasha Hannah on the show at one point. She's an attorney, and she said the attorney that kind of mentored her, for lack of a better term, he had the swag to him, and so she thought, well, I need to show this swag, and she realized she's just trying to impersonate him and never could really do it like he did it. In essence, really making herself a less good version of herself. So, of course, it was a success story for her. She went on to have a great career, and it continues to have a great career. But that's cool stuff. So, just on the subject of that basketball camp, I know we're having a lot of fun today. We probably talk all day long, but I don't want to get too far away from that. So, you had these was it European players that you were talking about?
So these are the NBA pre-draft training is for players who are trying to go from college or that age group to get drafted in the NBA.
Nice. So you had some people coming out of this camp. Anybody we might recognize, or any good stories there?
Yeah, certainly. Garrison Matthews, he plays for the Atlanta Hawks now. Nice. He's a 6'6" guy, shooter. Yeah. Played at Lipscomb. Okay. So not at a big school. Right? And so he's... you're going to talk about fighting for what you want, man. This guy is an absolute beast when it comes to just competing at a high level. And so it was awesome to have him in our camp, and along with the 3 other guys that were there, and a bunch of our guys have gone overseas and have really successful careers overseas. But this is a really difficult transition, because guys don't know if they're going to get picked up. Garrison actually didn't get drafted, but then he got picked up on a 2-way contract, which means that he could play between the G League team and the NBA team, right? And so they have 2 players. Every team has 2 players that can play up and down, kind of go back and forth. Well, he would go on to earn I think a 4-year deal with the Atlanta Hawks a couple years ago. So Garrison, really cool story. But it's really interesting seeing these guys come in, and they're all different. Right? They all have all different experiences, all different backgrounds, come from different schools. Some of these guys are from Europe that came over to America to try to use college basketball to boost their stock. And those were like some of the most fun years, like just being in the nitty gritty, because we trained hard. Like these guys got after it. We had training sessions in the morning, skill work in the morning, then we'd have a lift right after that, then they get a break and eat something, and then they come back in the gym again for shooting. So you're talking about 4 or 5 hours a day of just training, and then we'd mix in some competitive sessions too. And we had a pro day where we had the agent that I was working with. He brought in a lot of scouts from the NBA teams, and we had
no pressure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so really cool. A lot of our guys showed well that day on pro day,
nice.
And you know, it's really cool because I'm still connected with a lot, although none of them are here in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
Right, they're all over the world.
You would hope not, because there's no pro team in Myrtle Beach.
That's correct.
Well, one thing, and probably our last basketball topic, although we could talk basketball all day, is there's also a lesson in that. We've seen high draft picks who didn't work out. I think about Adam Morrison from Charlotte years ago. Kind of people who we thought they were going to be superstars. They got almost the golden ticket, didn't end up being that great. And then you got guys like Draymond Green, who were second-round draft picks. I think he was a second-rounder, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And you'll see them being huge successes in the NBA. So don't ever let anybody set your value. If you know you have value, you always got to know that that's the key thing. It's not what somebody else is telling you.
It's very true. But not only knowing your value, but backing that up with work and results, right? Because we have a generation coming up that maybe somebody told them they were just of high value. They don't have anything to back it up.
Yep.
They just think they have high value. And so I'm telling you, especially in the sports world, these kids are getting told all over the place that they're the best thing since sliced bread. And so they don't really have that edge that really pushes you past all of the difficult things. Like,
yeah, you know what's interesting? I think there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to just think you're so special, but you're not actually putting any time. But you also don't want to think you're not special at all. But there's that healthy balance in the middle combined with your determination.
Yeah, absolutely. The best mindset that I've seen like smushed together in terms of players have been the guys that are very confident because they know the time they put in and they know their ability. But they're also wildly hungry and coachable. And so there isn't a certain level that they reach that they're satisfied with. There isn't a certain achievement that they attain that they're satisfied with. Certainly they reach their goal and they're like, okay, this is great. But then they wake up the next day like, hey, we got to stay hungry, because if not, then I'm going to become what I don't want to be.
It's funny, the Who Moved My Cheese book, it works for everything, sports and everything else along. So, well, cool stuff, man. Well, like I said, we'll make a basketball episode one day. That'll be a 3-hour special, guys. Well, let's talk about this book. It's called Make Your Mark. Tell us a little bit about how you were inspired to write the book, what it's all about.
Oh, man. So this book came out of, I got sick with COVID and maybe something else at the same time in 2020, and it wrecked me. Like, I still consider myself an athlete. I love to work out, and I couldn't work out for 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
My heart rate was out of whack. I mean, it was so.
You mean like it was out of pace, or was it real low or real high?
It was super high.
Okay.
Like I would just stand up from getting up off the couch, and my heart rate would go from, it was already the baseline was already like in the 70s, which I'm normally in the 50s or 60s.
Sure.
So that was elevated. But then whenever I start moving around, man, like it was well above 100. Man. And so I couldn't work out for 6 or 7 months. So now I'm starting to experience all these crap feelings that I normally don't have of depression and some anxiety. Because normally if I have like the onset of that, I'm working out. I'm going to go flush it out one way or the other,
Absolutely.
Right? And so I wasn't able to do that. So I started dealing with so many of these emotions that I had never really dealt with and sat with before. So I had to get pretty comfortable with these and then learn how to deal with them in another way. Anyhow, so when I got sick, I was quarantining in my house.
Okay.
Right? Because nobody knew what was going on. Right? So I'm up in the guest bedroom. I come downstairs. I've got a mask on, and I see my daughter in the foyer, in the hallway, and she's just sitting down with her head in her hands, crying.
And how old's your daughter at this point?
She's 9.
9. Okay.
And so then I come down, I'm like, sweetie, what's wrong? Did something happen? And she just looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, Daddy, are you going to die?
Wow.
And I was like, wow, man, I don't think so. But now you bring it up, I don't really, because there's so many things on the news, and it was like fear, sure. Like everywhere, right? And so I go back upstairs after consoling her. I can't really touch her because we don't know if I could pass this along. And I look, I take some time, I go to the bathroom, I look in the mirror, and I hit this question of, if this was it, if this took you out, would this life be something that you're really proud to leave behind?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And it was very quickly like the answer was no. And too quickly, and there were certainly things that I was proud of with my kids and my wife and our family all together, and then building a basketball business. But what I had come to realize, and I think when I slowed down and I couldn't just work out and just keep going and busy myself to hide from some of these emotions that I wasn't comfortable with, what I came to realize is that I had been living much of my life in order to please others, in fear that I would not be accepted, or that I would not be appreciated, or that I would just be rejected. And so because of that, it was like, okay, time to stop playing small.
Okay.
Time to be okay with other people just not liking me.
Wow.
Time to own my beliefs. Time to, live a life that if it was over, I would be proud of.
Absolutely.
So live a life wildly full of love and care for others, full of ambition and goodness, going after trying to make something happen in this life, right? As an entrepreneur, and but then also be really, really good for the people that I'm serving. Yeah. And to be able to get there, I had to be me, right? And I think so. What I began to realize is that for so long, I was playing small to make other people feel comfortable.
Yeah. That's a fair point. And by the way, I want to address something you said a minute ago. I think we all do that in our own ways. When things get taxing on our mind, maybe sometimes it's easier not to pay attention to them and divert our attention in other directions. And, I think a lot of people, they have this thing that happens. You wake up in the middle of the night, your anxieties are at a peak. And why does that happen? Well, I was thinking, during the day, if I had the same anxiety about something about work or something that I haven't gotten accomplished, well, maybe I go work out, or maybe I just go bury myself in a project, and I never address the actual problem. But in the middle of the night, you got nothing except for your thoughts, and it's time to work it out, right?
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait to hear how you did it. So the book
is personification of me sticking my flag in the ground and saying, okay, if y'all don't like me, that's your problem.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be me, and I'm gonna trust that the character that my parents built into me, the character of learning through Christianity, the things that I learned about as a human, I'm gonna trust that that's good enough that I don't have to try to make everybody else happy. And it's amazing how much more truth comes out of me when I'm not worried about making other people happy. It's amazing how much more truth I can accept when I look in the mirror, and I can hold myself accountable because I'm not running from the things that I don't like that are inside of me, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing this way better version of me showing up for the people that I really care about, and for the people that I serve, for my clients. And then I'm starting to notice, maybe this is a secret all along for people who have lived a life of impact and achievement and fulfillment. Maybe this is something they were better at earlier on. I wish I could have, I look back and I'm like, dang, I wish I would have understood this at a younger age, but nobody was teaching me that.
Well, I agree, yeah.
When we're younger, people are trying to fit us in boxes. Whether it's religion or it's government or it's education, go this way, fit in that box and abide by their rules, and then you get a thumbs up.
Yeah.
But we don't really get taught, hey, you've been uniquely created with your gifts. That's all you need. Maximize those. Be good to people. Learn about whatever you can in life, and grow and push But understand, people aren't going to like you. Like, there's people I don't like.
Yeah.
So why am I thinking that everybody should like me?
We had this talk about the podcast, actually, at one point. The podcast you're listening to right now, I know that some people are listening and they're going to be bored by it. Some people aren't going to like it. And that's hard. Nobody wants to think somebody doesn't like my stuff. But here's the beauty of the world, right? There's how many billion people on this planet. What that means to me is, you're guaranteed to have some that won't like you, and you're also guaranteed to have some that will like you very much. So it's your job to be that best you. And so that always brought me a little comfort as I'm looking out there. I'm thinking I only have to appeal to 1% of people, and 1% of 7 billion or whatever that number is, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But you got to be yourself first. No defense mechanisms.
Yeah, and if the way that we can be guaranteed for people to not like us, or for everybody to like us, is to not do anything.
Yeah.
If you don't actually, like, I can't tell you how many people thought I was just trash at basketball. Right. They didn't think I was good enough to play Division I basketball. Even when I was on the court, there was a bunch of other students that thought they were better than me. They should have been on the court, and they should have had my spot.
Oh, of course.
Right? And so there's plenty of that going on, but the way for me to avoid that is just to hide in my shell. And if you think about this generation that we have coming up, we have so many young people who are hiding from getting exposed because everybody's recording everything now.
Yeah,
all of their friends are recording everything, and it doesn't. I've seen athletes hold back maximum effort because they don't want to get dunked on. They don't want to get schooled. They don't want to look bad because they're afraid it's going to go on Twitter or Snapchat or somewhere and go viral, and they're going to look like crap.
It's a different world, and I'm going to piggyback off of what you said. And we were talking to a fella named Brett from Tide Law at one point, and I was describing what my perception of his business was. And I'm going to tie this back to what you're talking about. And he was talking about, I said, Brett, when you dress up, I mean, he does dress up sometimes, but I said, you're an attorney, but you come in, you're wearing like a Hawaiian shirt. I mean, just use an example. It doesn't look like any other attorney. And he said to me, a problem that people do in business is they're so busy trying to emulate every other business. I'm going to be just like this other successful person. Well, all you're doing at that point is you're increasing your competition amongst all the other faceless people that it becomes. But when you can be unique, now you can be recognized, and you can be the best at what you're being recognized for. So I think there's a business principle in what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's awesome, by the way. He stands out because he is himself.
Exactly.
Right? And so one of the reasons I wrote the book is because, and you've got this word inspire on the wall, there are icons that we look up to that inspire us. And we say, we want to be like that. Great. But what do we want to be like? We want to have some of the characteristics they have. We're not going to be exactly like them. So if we can put that through our filter and say, this is what I want to take. Michael Jordan was my guy.
Okay,
right?
Okay, yeah.
He was 6'6".
Who's this Michael Jordan guy?
I'm barely 5'6". So we don't have very much in common when it comes to like athleticism and the ability to dominate. But he inspired me so much. Instead of me just trying to be exactly like him, I was like, I want to work like he works. I want to do the things that he does, so then maybe I can become the best that I can be, because I'm going to be a point guard. I'm not going to be the best scorer. I'm the best player in the world, right? And so if we can look at people who we appreciate, you were talking about that other attorney who she looked towards somebody, he's got this swagger. Well, why does he have it? He's probably just being himself.
Yeah.
Right? And so if she or me or you are just really tuned into who we are and we walk with that, that's the kind of swagger and confidence that people are attracted to.
I dig it.
It takes so much energy to try to be like
something else. And so it's natural. You're using less energy to be yourself. Let me throw one other thing. You talked about typecasting. And people who listen to the show, I'll use some sports references, but I think if you can just get past it, if you don't like sports, and just hear what I'm saying. So, do you watch NFL football, college football at all? So a quarterback named C.J. Stroud, he played for the Texans this year. He came out of Ohio State University. And the knock on C.J. was nothing about his playing ability, but rather that there had been a bunch of quarterbacks who had come out of Ohio State, highly regarded, who flopped in the NFL. And so what happened is people were looking at C.J. saying, he's going to flop in the NFL. He's just another quarterback out of Ohio State. CJ went out this year and had one of the best rookie years you've ever seen. So again, don't ever let people typecast you. You know what your value is. He just kept working, like you said, made it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And just tuned out the noise, right? Just tuned out the distraction.
Let's talk about this conference that you have coming up. It's the Leadership Conference. What are the dates on it again?
February 20th.
February 20th. So it's coming up and around the way. The inspiration for this, and what will people learn when they go there?
Yeah, I think I've spent enough time studying leadership and studying people who inspired me. I also have been a leader in the companies that I've started, or even as a high school basketball coach, and in different arenas. And leadership is such a general topic. And so it's awesome because it crosses all industries, right? Parents are leaders as well. So it's not just business, right? And so leadership has been something that's been really, really at the forefront of my mind. But how do we become great leaders? Like, what is the difference between terrible leaders, mediocre leaders, and then great leaders, right? And certainly I'm not the only one to be studying this, right? So some great books that I've read, and but really just to try to have more of a conversational style than just putting people in seats and talking at them. So we facilitate. That's what Bruce is my business partner in this, and we facilitate basically an emotional intelligence seminar on what it is to be a better leader, right? And understanding that everybody has different personalities, everybody has different leadership styles, everybody is dealing with different types of organizations and teams. So there is not a one-size-fits-all to this. If there's a one-size-fits-all, it's really understanding yourself as a human and how you step into leadership.
Very cool. Yeah, somebody can come out of this conference understanding the best way to unlock their leadership, for example. I'm gonna do something with you, and I would recommend everybody go out and check this conference out. It's on February 20th, and sounds like a great value. I'm gonna throw out a couple of leaders at you, and you tell me what you think, okay?
All right.
And I talk about this because if I ask my dad, who's a great leader, he says things like Alexander the Great. Well, I'm like, yeah, okay, you know, he got guys to do stuff for him, but I look at it as almost more like a charismatic leadership. I want people to understand that they can be a leader even if they're not charismatic. They can be a leader even if they're not the smartest person in the room, right? So I'm going to throw some leaders out at you. Tell me, you know, what kind of a leader you think they are. And I'm going to start off like Nelson Mandela. What do you say?
Oh my gosh. Humbly powerful.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just willing to put, and this is what I believe great leadership is the willingness and the ability to put the betterment of the group over the betterment of yourself.
Altruism.
Day in and day out.
Yes.
Day in and day out. And that is why to me is where we drop the ball. And even like who we promote as leaders within our society. We want to promote the best salespeople. We want to promote the guys who are just the loudest, like you were saying, the most charismatic, the most whatever. And that's not always the case.
Exactly.
Nelson Mandela was charismatic, but he wasn't loud and pushy and all the stuff. And he was willing to go to jail for what he believed in, for the cause that he believed in. Like, that's the type of leadership that can really move a country or a race forward. Martin Luther King is somebody who I talk about within the book, and it's the same sort of thing. Like, he knew at any point that he could be assassinated. That was not a new concept to him.
Exactly.
But he was willing to. There was something big enough for him to fight for him to not be, his betterment not to be at the forefront of it.
You know what's interesting, you say that, and I was going to give you another one, but I think you beat me to the punch. Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about leaders so often, like, oh, the leaders are in charge. You know, Mother Teresa wasn't trying to lead anybody, but she was a leader because of the way she put herself out there. She believed in something bigger. She wanted to see people get better today than they were yesterday. And so sometimes we get it stuck in this thing of, like you said, he's the top sales guy at the place. And there is a bit of leadership, but it's more like he's just leading the pack by his successes. We can learn something from him, but it doesn't exclude you from being a great leader. Sometimes it's the passion inside and the way that you lift others up.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. All right, dude, I'm digging it, man. I'm coming to the conference, man. This sounds really good. I want to make sure we hit something we started on at the beginning. We talked about emotional intelligence, and I want to leave people some value on the show as we, have this final 5 to 10 minutes today. Let's talk about emotional intelligence and some of the ways that you can, recognize it within yourself and build yourself up. What are some good things people need to know?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because our emotions are within inside of us, and the only way that we see our emotions is typically by body language, right? That is the expression of our emotions. And oftentimes when we are brought up with the notion that not all of our emotions are acceptable. And so for me, for others, we learn, for the ones that are not acceptable, we learn to stuff those down. We put them in the closet of the insides of our mind, and we say, okay, this is not an acceptable emotion for the people who are in authority right now. They don't like it, right? They're shutting it down. And so what happens is we get older and we don't understand how to process those emotions. We don't understand how to deal with them. So a lot of times how it surfaces or comes out is some sort of blow up, or it's some sort of, it could be fractures in a relationship. It could be, any coping mechanisms of drinking or shopping or drugs or whatever it could be. When we don't properly process our emotions, it's going to come and get us. And this is a very, very small way of, I do a parallel of emotional digestion, right? So it's the same as physical digestion. We eat something, our body takes the good stuff and gets rid of the bad stuff. Well, when we experience emotions, we've got to learn to be able to take the good stuff and then get rid of the bad stuff. A lot of times we experience emotions, and if it's not something that we're comfortable with, we just put it all aside. And then we have so many people that are walking around that are emotionally constipated. Like they're just, whatever it is, whether they're feeling, they don't feel like they can celebrate something, or they don't feel like they can express sadness or disappointment. Or for me, I wasn't comfortable taking on really hard conversations with my wife. Like I didn't want to upset people. And so walking around with that just weighs us down. We have to learn how to process that and get rid of that. And then with that sort of awareness, now we can be free. Now if you think about it, if you work out, you're a fit guy. If you add 50 pounds to your back to do whatever you're doing, it's going to make it that much harder. And so life altogether, leadership altogether, is so much harder when we got this emotional weight on us that we can't even really see. And so to help people navigate that and process that, so then they can be a leader that's kind of light on their feet. Right? A leader that doesn't explode when things don't go their way. A leader that's in tune and connected with their team to drive them forward.
And so I feel what you're laying down. So in essence, as kids, we're born with a certain emotion, cognitive processing, but there is a maturity that's lacking. Sometimes in life, maybe that kid's told, oh, you don't do that. You don't cry when this happens. You don't do this. And what's happening is there's an emotion behind it that they start bearing down. And I almost picture, sometimes we'll see the kid, I had an old coworker of mine, he would tell me his son was so competitive at the baseball games that he'd strike out, he'd start crying, And I think society tells him, don't you cry, you better not cry, and this is unacceptable. And there's a certain element of it that you do have to keep your overall emotion in check, but that powerful determination to be great at what he does also should not get washed out in the process of this, right?
He cares a lot. Like if he's crying about it, that means he cares a lot. That's fantastic. Why should we take that away from him? Right? But really what it comes down to is the parents were uncomfortable with seeing their kid crying in front of a bunch of other people, so they say, oh no, little Johnny, don't do that anymore. And then he's wildly confused. He's like, you guys want me to be great at baseball, and here I am, I'm trying my best, and then I strike out, and then so there's this confusion around it, right? And we grow up, and particularly as men, we grow up confused about our emotions because we're not supposed to feel them. We're supposed to be, almost caveman-like, or if you will, 007, right? Let's be 007, the guy who always gets the girl, the guy who doesn't make any mistakes and figures his way out of any problem, right? And doesn't really experience any emotions.
Right. I get you. Yeah.
And so for us who are normal human beings, and their movies are not made after us, maybe if we can learn how to better process our own emotions, have an awareness of the emotions of the ones that we're leading, then we can manage everything so much better so that we can move our group forward and they can trust us.
I dig it. There's a good summary of the emotional intelligence. I really love it. And So I have a few last minutes left, and I want to talk about how has, we talked a little bit about generational experience as far as emotional intelligence, maybe how the Gen Zers are handling it versus some of the later generations or earlier, depending on how you look at it. How has social media affected emotional intelligence in your mind?
Oh, if anything, it's... Okay, so I believe that social media gives many of us more anxiety than we should ever have. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times what we're seeing on social media is telling us not the truth. And so we're comparing our lives to the highlights that we're looking at, and then it leads to some depression because we're like, oh, we want to be on that trip to Bali. Mm-hmm. We want to be on that trip. Why is this person always traveling? This seems like I should be able to do this too, but I can't, so am I a loser? And, right? So maybe people go down that rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
I think social media in itself for young people is just wildly misunderstood, and I think it's pretty unnecessary. I think the biggest thing that it does is it provides what feels like connection, and it's not connection.
Right. Wow.
So face-to-face connection is real, mm-hmm. And it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It can be uncomfortable, and that's why we see so many men not going into relationships now. We see so many people not wanting to do the face-to-face thing because honestly, in the past 10 years, they've not had to. They can do almost all they want to do on their phone. They can almost serve any one of their desires on their phone. And so why do you need to go to a human? That's wildly uncomfortable. I don't know how this is going to go. When I get onto my device, I know exactly how this is going to go. So it's about control, and it's about trying to not deal with any discomfort, which is just, like I was alluding to earlier, just holding us back from becoming the best that we can be.
So in other words, I actually hit on kind of a hot topic right at the end of the show. I feel like that's it is it's almost stunting some people's emotional intelligence, and
100%.
They're not going through the hard work. Man, I'll tell you what, I'll have you back on the show. We're going to talk some more because there's too many things that we haven't covered today. But for this time, I want to make sure we are able to let the people find you. How do they find you, Colin?
You can check out my website, thecolinstevens.com. Colin with one L, Stevens with a V. And then I'm definitely on all the social media platforms, The Colin Stevens. And if any of you guys get a crazy hair, my email is 12colinstevens@gmail.com.
Awesome. And his leadership conference is on February 20th. Come out and check it out. How can they get tickets to that?
Yeah, that's also on the website, betterleadership.com. It goes through my personal website. And pick up a book. Make your mark. If something I said, struck a chord within you, pick it up. I hope it serves you well.
Man, that's good stuff. Hey, thank you for coming to the show, man. Really, really great stuff. We'll have you back on again, and we'll check out that conference. For you guys listening, we're going to sign out with that today. I do want to ask you guys, check out the leaders list. We have a group of some of the best companies in the area. Check that out. Thank you for watching the show as always, and we'll see you all next time on the Leader Mentality Show with Rob Clemens.